by giving a quick introduction to the program. So thank you all for joining us. This is the Homegrown Series presented by Earth Day 365. My name is Victoria Donaldson. I'm the program manager for the Green Dining Alliance with Earth Day 365. The Green Dining Alliance is a program that works with restaurants in the St. Louis region to help them reduce their impact on the environment through their operations. So I'm sorry. Let's get this up. So yeah, that's who I am. And without going any further, I want to, of course, give a shout out to our sponsors, the St. Louis Jefferson Solid Waste Management District, as well as Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Also a huge shout out to the Young Friends of Earth Day 365. They were huge supporters for this program tonight, including being sponsors of our door prize, which is a jar of salsa from Ujima's Project Salsa, which will be discussed a little later by Nick Speed, and also a digital copy of our Taste of Green cookbook, which if you don't get a chance to win by chance, you can just go to our website to buy a copy yourself. And with that, in order to be entered into the door prize, we would love for you to send a chat message directly to Erica Halsey. You'll be able to see her name in the chat, of course, and just send her your full name, your email, and your zip code. I know that people who are seeing this on Facebook may not get a chance to do this, but those who are in the Zoom version, feel free to do that if you'd like to be entered to win that door prize. And lastly, with that, we also want to mention there are various ways that you can support us. One way is by attending events and programs like this one, but another one is also becoming a member of Earth Day 365. So we have various memberships starting at $25 and going all the way up to, I believe, $1,000. And with that, you get a lot of benefits and a lot of perks. Not just, of course, supporting amazing organizations and efforts like Earth Day 365, but also just the opportunity to like get discounts at GDA restaurants or get a set of bamboo cutlery and so many more stuff. So that's that. And let's get into the program. So thank you again for joining us. This is our inaugural Homegrown series, and we would like to introduce our speaker for tonight, who is Nick Speed of Ujima. He is the founder and president of Ujima. He was born and raised in St. Louis. He developed a passion for taking care of the planet, food justice, and working with youth. In 2016, he began serving as an AmeriCorps member of Earth Dance Organic Farm School. And at Earth Dance, he led educational field trips for youth in the Ferguson-Florissant School District and facilitated workshops at organic farming principles, on organic farming principles, permaculture, and creating inclusive urban agriculture spaces. From 2017 until last year, Nick was a youth educator for Gateway Greening. He taught over 300 students in the St. Louis Public School District about science, nature, and urban agriculture. In addition to working with kids, he facilitated professional development with workshops for other educators in the region and assisted in the development of local community garden projects. Nick is inspired daily by greater St. Louis area, his family, close friends, and colleagues. So without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to Nick.
Awesome. So good evening, everybody. Just first want to say thank you so much to you, Victoria, for helping put this together. Shout out to everybody on the Earth Day 365 team, all the folks behind the scenes who made this happen. Like I mentioned to y'all, I really appreciate the platform and the opportunity to share my organization and the things that we are doing here in St. Louis. And so with that being said, I started Ujima in 2018, and the short version was I wanted to create an organization that was surrounded in food justice, environmental stewardship, and youth empowerment. And my goal is to really expound upon that in my presentation. And yeah, so that's how it got started. Would you mind going to the next slide? Okay, and so this is why we exist. It's really our North Star. And so the universe works in really amazing ways. Around the time I started Ujima, I was gifted a book called Farming While Black. And when I read the introduction, it literally gave me goosebumps. And one of the quotes that really stood out to me was this one right here. And so, you know, white supremacy in general is difficult to talk about, but the reality is that it is reflected in every fabric of our society. And for us, we really wanted to look at this quote and have it be reflected in all of our products, our services, and all the decisions that we make. And so from a farming aspect, you know, history tells us that the government, as well as white supremacist organizations, specifically prevented Black and Indigenous people from not only owning land, but also having access to the resources needed to have and sustain farms. Once upon a time, 14% of all the farmers in this country were Black. Currently, it's less than 1%. And so that, unfortunately, was very intentional. And so because of that, I think that there's a huge disconnect in the knowledge of our ancestors, because the reality is, you know, Black and Indigenous folks are the architects of agriculture and STEM. And so when we think about the earliest civilizations in human history, you know, Black and Indigenous people were not just surviving, but they were thriving because they were able to master agriculture, and they were able to feed not just hundreds, but thousands of people for an extended period of time. And so there is a huge disconnect in our knowledge of, you know, our ancestors and their work in agriculture. And then also, I think that there is just in my time as an outdoor educator, there's a disconnect in Black youth specifically, their connection to nature. There's also a disconnect in terms of knowing where their food comes from. And then just the desire to be outside and to be curious about nature. Unfortunately, you know, that does not exist. And I often found myself, you know, having conversations with youth who felt that any type of gardening or farming was connected to slavery. And so that was really a sobering reality for me as an educator. And so I really wanted to really push back against, you know, the systemic oppression that has existed in this country, and then also set up systems that will empower marginalized communities specifically. So yeah, next slide, please. And so this is our mission and vision. Ultimately, we want to build systems that will dismantle and replace the ones that are designed to oppress us. And so, you know, my time living, you know, here in St. Louis, being born and raised, you know, I started to notice patterns, and, you know, marginalized communities, not just here in St. Louis, but all across this country, they all look very similar. And they also have a lack of access to food and the resources to grow their own. And so because of that, we need to do what we can as an organization to not just restore these communities, but set them up to empower themselves and even thrive in these conditions. Next slide, please. And so how did we get here? So Victoria talked a little bit about my previous job. So AmeriCorps was really a pivotal job in my life because I found myself working with high school, college students early on at the United Way, and then I transitioned to Earth Dance Organic Farm School. And that was a big game changer because I had never worked on any type of large garden or farm in any capacity. And so I was very much learning on the fly, but I also fell in love with nature and just being outside, connecting with the soil, learning so much from knowledgeable individuals, and then seeing as I started to network and continue to connect within agriculture circles, I found myself being the only queer Black individual in those spaces. And so once I started to realize that, I knew that I had to continue on this path. Didn't really know what that looked like until about 2018 when I started Earth Dance. And so, I'm sorry, I started Ujima, my apologies. But, you know, after Earth Dance, I started working for Gateway Greening, and I did direct education for St. Louis Public Schools. All of that stuff that I was doing during this time was amazing work. I learned so much, I grew so much, and I really found a passion in connecting with youth. But at the same time, I felt that during these job experiences, I felt that there was space to create more jobs and leadership roles for Black and Indigenous people. I also felt that there was opportunity to do more in terms of empowering marginalized communities. And because I was oftentimes the only queer Black person in these spaces, I by default was expected to, you know, educate the staff about racism, about queer and trans inclusion, you know, all of these things, which, you know, I had no problem doing, but at the same time, you know, this was free labor, and it was also taking an emotional toll upon me. And so no shade on my previous employers, but at the same time, I felt that there was so much more work that could have been done in these spaces. And so instead of complaining about it, I decided to step out on a limb and make that into a reality. Next slide, please. And so, like I mentioned, the real pillars of Ujima is food justice, environmental stewardship, and youth empowerment. And so every time that we have an event where we have food available, it will always be donation-based or pay what you can. So we really wanted to break down the economic barriers in terms of access to fresh produce and fresh herbs and healthy and nutritious meals, especially for marginalized communities. And so that has really been one of our staples. While we don't have a permanent kitchen space, we've been fortunate enough to connect with organizations throughout St. Louis and do some really amazing pop-up events. But we wanted to make sure first and foremost that we're doing our part in food justice and making sure that everyone has this equitable access. In terms of environmental stewardship, I'm really big on that because we only have one planet, and we need to do a better job of taking care of it. And so whenever we have these pop-up events, we make sure as much as possible to have a zero waste event. We have compostable materials, and we also compost on our garden sites as well. I'm really passionate about vermicomposting, and I do my best to educate youth about those different concepts. And then we also are just really trying to work towards repairing, especially the marginalized communities that have been affected by environmental racism. And I think it's just really important for us to sow these seeds, especially in the next generation. Because yeah, like I said, we only got one planet, and we need to do our best to take care of it. In terms of youth empowerment, just as my background as an educator, I've always been passionate about youth. And as I was learning these things, I wanted to make sure that I imparted that knowledge on to the next generation. And then also making sure that they get compensated for their time. I've unfortunately seen a lot of examples in which, unfortunately, youth have been taken advantage of. And so I want to make sure that we not only engage these youth in community service, teach them about agriculture, about culinary, environmental stewardship. We also want to compensate them for their time too. And so that's also a big part of what we do. We've had various paid learning experiences for high school and college students. And then this year, we're actually going to be rolling out our youth apprenticeship program, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. Next slide, please. And so this is a little bit about our impact in 2020. So we were able to create over 300 pay what you can meals. I mentioned facilitating those paid learning experiences for youth. We were able to do some virtual cooking classes from our garden spaces at Clay and Columbia Elementary. We were able to donate over 200 pounds of fresh herbs and produce to families of color. We donated over 75 meals to the St. Patrick Center and folks experiencing homelessness. We also launched a GoFundMe campaign for Project Salsa, raised a little bit over 15,000. And then we also developed some salsa recipes. So even in the midst of a pandemic and a lot of financial struggles, we were able to make an impact, and we are excited to continue this work on in 2021. Okay, and so our plans for this year, so we're super excited to be collaborating with Chef Robert Roussan. He has property in North St. Louis that we are going to transform into a community farm / outdoor education space. Chef Rob currently has 9 goats on his site, and I'm super excited to incorporate that education with youth. And we're looking to expand some things with the goats, looking into getting some goat milk and cheese. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where that goes. We're also going to be launching our youth apprenticeship program. So we're going to have 3 high school students and 2 college students work with us for 8 months. The goal is for them to not only learn about agriculture and culinary skills, but then also entrepreneurship. And so they're going to help us make our first value-added product, which is going to be salsa. And then they're also going to be helping maintain our garden spaces, distribute this fresh produce to families in need. We're going to be doing some neighborhood cleanups as well as some catering experiences. So once they leave the program, the goal is for them to either get employment or for them to have the tools that they need to start their own business. And so we really wanted to also make sure, like I said, that they're compensated for their time. And so they're going to be receiving monthly stipends as well throughout this experience. And so, yeah, just as an educator, I'm super excited to get this project off the ground. And in terms of our salsa, really fortunate to be working with another local chef, Nico Shumpert, amazing up and coming culinary talent. He's going to be making the salsa for us. And so we developed this really amazing pineapple as well as a spicy tomato salsa. And so, yeah, just really excited to take things to the next level and really continue our impact here in St. Louis. Okay. And so theory of change. So what is the point of all of this stuff that we're doing? So, you know, ultimately we want to empower the next generation. So whether it be them participating in our apprenticeship program, whether it's kids coming to our sites for field trips, whether it's creating service learning opportunities, we really want to instill these skills in youth so they can become productive citizens. In addition to that, we're going to be creating these value-added products So these products are not just going to be good in quality. We're also going to be leaning on the community. So the products for the salsa will be grown by local farmers or come from farms in this region. The kitchen spaces that we will be cooking the salsa in will be right here in St. Louis. We want to utilize local, grocery stores and farmers markets to sell these products. And ultimately, it's going to be opportunities for the youth to learn and grow and get paid alongside with the youth apprenticeship program. In addition to that, we want to recognize the reality that indigenous communities inhabited this land before us. And we need to do our due diligence to make sure we are honoring those communities and also creating space for those communities to collaborate with us as well. And so I really wanted to make sure that that is, a portion of what we do and how we go about empowering the greater St. Louis area. And ultimately, this is what community looks like for us. And so a bunch of ways to get in touch with us. You can send us an email. You can contact us via our website. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We even on LinkedIn now. So we on all the stuff. So we are obviously a nonprofit. So we are always looking for donations, but we're also looking for passionate individuals that are willing to donate their time as well, because there's a lot of work to be done, and we are always looking to collaborate and connect with like-minded individuals that are passionate about bringing change here in St. Louis. And so always looking for volunteers, folks to support and collaborate. Yeah, all of that good stuff. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity, this platform. Definitely wanted to open it up for questions or comments because I know I talked a lot.
All right, can you hear me now? There we go. All right, so first, thank you so much. Let me stop sharing that. Thank you so much, Nick, for being here and for discussing Ujima and Project Salsa and all that you all are doing in the community. Let me see if this is running right. There we go. All right. So, so yeah, first, I do want to give room or give time for everyone to ask a question about Ujima or Project Salsa, just about Nick, because he's a great person and he's just phenomenal in general. But I do have a couple questions that I wanted to ask, and hopefully that'll maybe even inspire some people to ask some questions. And if you're on Facebook by chance and you have questions, feel free to drop some in the comments, and then I'll try to reiterate them to him. So we'll get that in as well. So you actually answered a couple of questions I already had like premeditated. So I'm gonna jump through a couple of them. So I know Project Salsa is like the main project that you have going on right now. What other initiatives or projects or programs do you all have in mind coming up, like past the Project Salsa initiative, or even like once that particular program is kind of like running itself, if you have any?
Yeah, for sure. So last year, and it was really just because of the circumstances of the pandemic, we started taking the excess from our school gardens and started donating it to families of color. And so starting last year in March, I literally just went on Facebook and was like, hey, who needs some fresh produce? Who needs some herbs? Sent a list of things that we got. It was like, hey, just hit me up. And then it just evolved into a monthly donation. We ended up connecting with Earth Dance. And so they ended up giving us some produce. And then, yeah, next thing you know, we had like 200 pounds of produce that we ended up donating to families. And so we were able to connect with some other mutual aid efforts. And yeah, it was just really startling to see just how great that need was. But then also just us just really pivoting and saying, hey, this need is here. And so we got this produce. And so doing whatever we can to make sure the people that need it got it. And so that program kind of came out of thin air, but we're still going to continue to do our monthly donations to families starting in March. So yeah, super excited for that. And then we're also going to be working with Chef Rob to transform this space on Penrose to outdoor classroom space. So
that's my neighborhood. So
yeah, come through and meet the goats.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are. So first thing we got to do is we got to relocate the goats to next door. But then once that happens, we're going to start repurposing the garden beds and kind of whip those into shape. And then, yeah, continuing our produce donations to families, but then also have a demonstration area for kids to learn and grow on their own as well.
Okay, cool. Another question I have is, you already mentioned like volunteer opportunities, but what other ways can the public or other organizations or anybody can support Ujima and Project Salsa? And I know you mentioned the fundraiser that you all started with for Project Salsa. Like, is that GoFundMe still running? And is, you know, can we still donate to that? And like, so on. Like, just tell us, how can we support you all in these efforts?
Yes, for sure. So the GoFundMe is still open. So you can still donate through their website. That's also kind of connected through PayPal. So you can donate to our PayPal also if you want. In terms of volunteer opportunities, starting this Saturday, we're going to be on Penrose every Saturday at 2 p.m. Just getting things together in the garden, hanging out with the goats. And so that's going to be set in stone for at least the foreseeable future. But then also once we get things up and running in March, we're also going to start to do weekly tours as well of the space. So people will have plenty of opportunity to come check us out and see what we're doing. Always open to collaborating because we got lots of space. So we're not just at Penrose, we're also at Columbia Elementary, which is like a ½ acre. And then we're also at we're also at Clay Elementary, which is kind of in limbo because the district unfortunately decided to close the school. But until they kick us out, we're going to continue to maintain it as a community garden space. So we'll be all up and through North St. Louis, just doing this work of food justice.
Good, good. So let me see what else. Actually, yeah, you answered that question as well. So let's actually open the floor to our audience. Does anybody have any questions? Angie, I see you popped in. So does anybody have any questions for Nick related to Project Salsa or Ujima as a whole, or anything else that he mentioned in his presentation?
I'm curious to know a little bit more. I love the idea of taking any unused produce from a community garden and sharing it with people in need that are going to, you know, receive the nutrition, and that food's not getting wasted. I'm curious, like, what your model is, because I know you need to pick the produce right at the right time so it doesn't go bad before you can get it where it needs to go. Like, how is it volunteers that do that? Is it staff? And how can you scale that up? And do you do any of that with Gateway Greening? I'm trying to think through where other community gardens are located. I know some of those gardens, they sell produce like at farmers markets. Some of them are going to communities at need. Like, I would love to see that scaled up. And I don't know the ins and the outs, I guess, that's involved in that process.
Yeah, great question. So for now, we are thankful to have some really amazing volunteers that support us on Harvest Day. And so what happens is we either set up an opportunity for folks to come meet us at Clay Elementary and pick up their produce on site, or once we finish harvesting everything, I'll load everything up in coolers and do drop-offs that day. So we pretty much have to get everything out like that day as soon as possible. And so we are working on, you know, now that we have the space on Penrose, we have a little bit more flexibility because the other spaces we were utilizing SLPS land. And so now, because Chef Rob owns this property, we can install refrigerators, freezers, and can increase our storage capacity. So for example, if folks can't come that day, we can have things stored for multiple days at a time, and kind of extend our hours in which folks can pick up produce from us.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Things for the question, Angie. In the chat, Joyce had actually, she said she missed the location for the North City programming. So I believe she's speaking of the Penrose one that you were mentioning. So like, yeah, is there more, I guess, finite details of exactly where that is that you can share?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I can get the address.
Okay.
Pull that up now, actually.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's right on Penrose off of North Grand.
Okay.
So we're about Fairground Park.
Yeah, exactly. So like I said, it's not too far from where I live, which is awesome. So there you go, Joyce. Are there any other questions from any audience in Zoom or on even Facebook? I'm looking through the chat now. Nothing has popped up on Facebook. I'll give everybody a second to think of something. If not, I can come up with some more questions, you know. No? All right. So I know you mentioned like kind of like part of the mission and ethics of what you all do through Ujima is about supporting those like underrepresented or underserved communities, specifically the Black community, and also showing the respect and honor to Indigenous communities that once, you know, held this land before we came here. So what, I guess, my question probably is along the lines of like, why? You know, it's a conversation that's being had more and more. And while it may be more obvious between me and you what the why is, but for a broader audience, especially an audience that tends to be mostly white when it comes to sustainability or environmentalism or food access, like, how would you explain is the why it is important for you as a Black queer male, and also for them who are not Black queer males to support these efforts and to recognize the significance of these efforts for Ujima and other organizations similar to Ujima who do the work to support the Black community, or let's just say the BIPOC community?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. You know, for me, I think my why is one, I think it starts from me seeing the history of oppression and discrimination in agriculture spaces. And then also, I think as I got older, I began to have a greater understanding of history and the fact that our ancestors had so many contributions in the agriculture realm and contributions to humanity in general. And I think a lot of that education does not exist in most of our school systems. And because of that, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just, you know, keeping this knowledge to myself. I wanted to make sure that as many people as possible were able to learn about this, especially the next generation, because I think ultimately they're the ones that are going to create a better society. And as an educator, I really wanted to create the resources and tools that were needed for them to learn about themselves and their history, but then also to empower these communities. And then to speak on the indigenous communities portion, goes to education. So, finding out that, the connection between Black and Indigenous cultures and communities, the fact that, there's scientific evidence that Africans have been in the Americas up to 100 years before Christopher Columbus. And then just, connecting with Indigenous people and just realizing the erasure of those communities. And so just really wanting to make sure that we are intentional about the land that we have stewardship over, and recognizing that it is very precious. And we need to not only take care of it, but also honor our ancestors that inhabited this land before us. And so I think that is a big part of restoring and healing marginalized communities, connecting us back to the land, connecting us back to our ancestors, and really creating these systems that will, empower us to sustain ourselves and our futures.
Awesome. So we have another question from Elizabeth. She said, loved hearing about your organization. You talked about queer inclusivity earlier. Can you talk more about the intersection of queer and trans people and BIPOC and advocacy in your space?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Thanks for that question, Elizabeth.
Right. Love it. And so, during this process, I've been very fortunate enough to connect with other queer and trans folks in St. Louis who are also passionate about agriculture, and, realizing the, history of discrimination and violence towards queer and trans communities. A lot of things led to the fact that, a lot of these communities didn't feel welcome in agriculture spaces. And so because of that, and because of my own identity, I wanted to make a space that was welcome for all gender identities and expressions. And so that is something that we are, constantly working on. And I am by no means the expert in this. And then I also want to make sure, as a leader, I also recognize my privileges as a able-bodied, cisgendered, masculine presenting individual, and recognize that we need to make spaces that are accessible to maybe folks who have developmental disabilities, or folks who maybe have physical disabilities and have trouble with mobility. So just thinking about all of these different ways in which communities are silenced, but then flipping that and making sure that all of our spaces, our products, and our services are as inclusive as possible.
Awesome. That is good. That was a good, I like that. I'm glad that you asked that question, and I'm glad that you got a chance to speak on that specifically. Again, that intersectionality is important in all aspects of our daily lives, whether it's in this particular field as far as food justice, or again, the environmental field as a whole, or just advocacy for human rights, So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Any other questions, comments, or anything? Joyce asked, how many goats are on site this winter?
We have 9 goats.
Nice.
Yes, and so they are an awesome bunch. And yeah, if you just so happen to be riding around in that area, you may see some goats wandering around grazing. Yeah, Chef Rob is really adamant about them being able to explore North St. Louis.
Are they in the onesies for the winter?
So, Chef Rob is, he's definitely like the goat whisperer, but like he has like built like these makeshift containers, and he has like lots of hay and stuff. So they have basically insulated booths in the backyard that they all sleep in, and they make it happen.
Nice, nice. So any other questions or comments or anything to Nick about, again, Ujima, or through about Project Salsa, anything? Last call for questions. Nothing on Facebook.
No question, but just thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
It was really wonderful to hear about the great work you're doing. So thank you.
Thanks for saying that, Erica. I agree with that. You're doing amazing work, which is just, aligned with the amazing person that you are, Nick. I'm gonna say it again. I appreciate you. For those who do not know, me and Nick have known each other since we were kids. We basically, like, our families know each other in some capacity, and we actually went to college briefly together. So we have a long history together. And with that, Nick has always been this great of a person. So thank you again, Nick, for doing this, for being here, for doing the amazing work that you're doing, and, elevating again those unheard voices in this movement. And with that, I want to thank you all for being here for our inaugural Homegrown Series. We'll have more to come, later down the pipeline. We do have another program scheduled for February, which will be featuring Erica Williams of A Red Circle, which is an organization out in North County. She'll be discussing her efforts to again, combat food insecurity and food apartheid in North County. So without further ado, I also want to mention, make sure if you are on the Zoom call again and you want to be entered into the door prize competition, or whatever you want to call it, send a direct message to Erica Halsey with your full name, your email, and your zip code, and you'll be entered to win a jar of salsa from, of course, Project Salsa, and as well as a digital copy of the Taste the Green cookbook presented by Earth Day 365, which was also put together by the Young Friends of Earth Day 365. So without that, again, if there's no more questions, no more comments or thoughts or anything, I would like to say good night. Thank you again for being here, and peace out.